My lawyer had never raised his voice in 30 years, so when he called and said, "James, come here right now," I knew something was terribly wrong. He sounded frightened, and before I could ask a single question, he hung up. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I drove across town. Every horrible possibility raced through my mind. Had someone stolen my identity? Had I lost my home? Had something happened to my family? I had no answers, only a growing feeling that my life was about to change forever. If you enjoy heartfelt family stories with meaningful life lessons, I'd truly appreciate you subscribing to Behind Dad. And before we continue, I'd like to mention that the visuals shown throughout this video are creative dramatizations designed to help tell my story. They are not actual photographs from my personal life. When I reached my lawyer's office, the receptionist didn't even ask me to sign in. She simply pointed toward the conference room with a worried look on her face. The moment I opened the door, I stopped in my tracks. My son, Michael, was already sitting at the table. He looked just as surprised to see me as I was to see him. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. For months, Michael and I had barely spoken after a painful disagreement over my late wife's estate. I believed time would eventually heal the distance between us. Seeing him there made my stomach tighten. My lawyer slowly closed the door behind me and placed a thick folder on the table. His hands were trembling. That alone terrified me because this was a man who never showed emotion. He looked at both of us before quietly saying, "What I'm about to show you changes everything you thought you knew." Then he slid a single document across the table toward me. I glanced at the title, and my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't my wife's signature that shocked me. It was the date written beneath it. If that document was real, then someone had been hiding an unbelievable secret from my family for years, and my son had absolutely no idea I was about to discover it beside him. My hands trembled as I picked up the document. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. The signature belonged to my late wife, Margaret. I had seen her handwriting thousands of times over the course of our marriage, and there was no doubt it was hers. But the date at the bottom made no sense. It had been signed just 2 weeks before she passed away, yet I had never seen it before. I looked at my lawyer, hoping he would tell me it was fake. Instead, he quietly nodded and said, "We verified everything. This document is completely authentic." Michael leaned forward, trying to read over my shoulder. His face slowly turned pale. The paper wasn't a new will as we had both expected. It was a legally witnessed letter that Margaret had asked our lawyer to keep sealed until he uncovered proof that our family was falling apart over money. She had predicted that grief might one day turn into conflict, and she wanted the truth to be revealed only when it was truly needed. I felt my chest tighten because every word described exactly what had happened between my son and me. Then my lawyer opened another folder and placed several photographs on the table. They showed Margaret visiting his office alone during the final weeks of her illness. I remembered those afternoons. She had told me she was meeting old friends because she didn't want me worrying about legal paperwork while we were fighting cancer together. Looking at those pictures, I realized she had quietly spent her final days trying to protect our family from a future she somehow saw coming. Michael lowered his head and whispered that he had spent months believing I had hidden parts of his mother's estate from him. I admitted I had thought he only cared about the inheritance. We had both built walls from assumptions instead of asking each other the truth. The room became painfully quiet. My lawyer reached for the sealed envelope attached to the document and slowly broke the wax seal. "This," he said, "contains Margaret's final message." As he unfolded the pages, he looked at us with tears in his eyes and warned us that after we heard her words, neither of us would ever see our families pass the same way again. My lawyer began reading the letter aloud because neither Michael nor I could steady our hands. The first sentence brought silence to the entire room. "My two favorite men, if you're hearing these words together, then my greatest fear has come true." Tears filled my eyes before he finished the first paragraph. Margaret wrote that she knew grief could make good people misunderstand each other. She begged us not to let money become more important than the years we had shared as a family. She reminded Michael how I worked double shifts so he could attend college and how I never missed a single baseball game, even after 12-hour workdays. Then she reminded me that our son wasn't greedy. He was frightened of losing the last connection he had to his mother. Every sentence felt like she was sitting in the room beside us. She admitted there had never been any hidden fortune, secret property, or forgotten inheritance. Everything she and I had built was already listed in the will we both knew about. The only thing she had hidden was this letter because she hoped we would never need it. Sadly, we did. Michael wiped away his tears and quietly admitted he had believed rumors from distant relatives who claimed I had changed the will after Margaret died. Instead of asking me directly, he allowed doubt to grow into resentment. I looked at my son and realized I had made the same mistake. I had convinced myself he cared more about money than about losing his mother. We had spent months grieving alone when we should have been grieving together. Just as my lawyer finished the final page, his assistant rushed into the office carrying another sealed envelope that had been delivered only minutes earlier. It had no return address. The front simply read, "For James and Michael. Opened together." My lawyer frowned because he had never seen it before. He carefully handed it to me. Inside was a single photograph of my wife standing beside a man neither of us recognized, and on the back she had written one sentence in her own handwriting: "This man kept a promise that neither of you even knew I made." My son and I stared at each other, realizing our mother's final secret was still waiting to be uncovered. My hands were trembling as I turned the photograph over again. My lawyer looked at it for several seconds before quietly smiling through his tears. He recognized the man immediately. His name was Thomas, a retired music teacher who had volunteered at the children's hospital where Margaret received treatment during her final months. My lawyer explained that, before she passed away, my wife had privately arranged for a donation to be made in her name after both Michael and I had healed from our grief. She never wanted the gift to become something people praised her for. She wanted it to become something that reminded us that love grows stronger when it is shared instead of fought over. Inside the envelope was one final letter addressed to both of us. Margaret wrote, "If you have reached this page together, then you've already taken the first step I prayed for. Don't spend the rest of your lives arguing over what I left behind. Spend it protecting the family I loved with all my heart." Neither Michael nor I could hold back our tears. For months, we had allowed misunderstandings and pride to build walls between us. In just a few minutes, her words tore every one of those walls down. Michael looked at me with tears running down his face and whispered, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you instead of listening to rumors." I pulled him into a hug, something neither of us had done since we buried his mother. At that moment, it didn't matter who had been right or wrong. All that mattered was that we still had the chance to become a family again. Together, we honored Margaret's final wish by making the donation she had planned and spending the day talking about the happy memories we had nearly forgotten. Looking back now, I realize the most valuable inheritance my wife ever left us wasn't written in a legal document. It was the reminder that trust, forgiveness, and family are worth far more than money. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments because your words may help someone else heal. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder to choose love over pride. Thank you for spending this time with me on Behind Dad. Never wait until it's too late to tell your family how much they mean to you, because the greatest legacy we leave behind is the love we give while we're still here.